All right, Kevin back with you with another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships podcast. And today I am here with Hannah Bartlett. Hannah, welcome. So awesome to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited for this conversation. I'm feeling the energy build already.
Oh, you and me both. You and me both. This is going to be so good. And I want to give a shout out to Sharon Hunt because you and I wouldn't even be talking without the role that Sharon played in us. And I've known Sharon for a number of years. Sharon, I don't know how long has it been, Hannah? It's probably been about a month, 3 weeks, a month that Sharon sent an email and said, I think you guys should talk. And I have known Sharon though for man, I want to say 8, 9 years. And in my other company, when I had the publishing business, Sharon and her whole team, they handled all of my tech for me, all of the internet stuff, all of the stuff that would make me want to pull my hair out. They handled all of that and made it all work. And I am so incredibly grateful for the role that she has held in my life all these years. And so when she sent me that email saying, hey, Kevin, I know this gal that I'm working with and that I'm serving her, like kind of like I used to serve you, and you guys should really talk. Well, that carries so much weight with me. And I'm like, Sharon, anyone that you would say I should have a conversation with, I am 100% in. And this interview is actually the third time you and I have hopped on Zoom, Hannah, and I'm really looking forward to this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by turning it over to you because I would just like to give you the opportunity to share, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you do, and even give us some of the backstory as far as like how you even got into doing what you do, and we'll start there.
I think that's a good place to start. I think the backstory helps to understand, doesn't it? So I always start with one moment. When you're living the moment in your life, you don't realize that it's going to be the catalyst for everything, but this really was the catalyst for everything in my life. When I was 19 years old, I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and eating disorder in the same 3 weeks, right, as my mum was diagnosed with cancer. So you can imagine those were 3 weeks to remember.
Yeah.
And I'm going to kind of miss a lot of the story, except really kind of touch on the important points. And what I learned when I was diagnosed at 19 years old and my mum was diagnosed was the lack of resources around for people that are navigating mental health. This is about 10 years ago now, to give you all context, right? The lack of resources that are around for people, or were around for people that are navigating either their own mental health complications or something very serious in the family system, like a death or a grief or a passing or an illness. And so when I was 19, I was very acutely aware of there's something missing in our society here. Like, we're dealing with this in our family. Our friends don't feel comfortable speaking about this. We don't really have tools and solutions. And really at the age of 19, I was still kind of in the kind of thinking of the adults don't know the answers. That I still felt like that. I was 19, I was like, the adults don't know the answers. And so I remember this phone call. I would have been 20 at a push, maybe not even. And I remember calling my dad. And when I found out that I had depression and all of these things, I found out that my mum had had depression her whole life until she passed away. And I called my dad and I said, that's not my story. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know anything about mental health. I don't know anything about living and life and healing. But I said to him, I'm going to heal, right? And I said, then I'm going to share it with the world. And I committed to that at 20 years old, right? And so I finished university, I studied psychology, and I laughed because I was like, I've studied psychology and I'm on antidepressants. And I'm I know, this doesn't really make sense. And so I was, offered to stay because I got such hard grades. And I was like, no, this is like, I need to work this out on my own. So I bought a one-way flight to Australia. Okay. And like a lot of young people do. But the context of my trip was slightly different in the fact that even though I did leave formal education, I've not stopped studying since. And so I started certifying in nutrition. I started certifying in all of the typical things that people certify in. And yes, I improved. I came off medication. But when I was 23, I get an email from my mum. They emailed me. That shows the level of emotional intelligence that we've been taught in our planet, really. I'm going to die. I've got 3 years max. And I became a full-time carer for my mother. And I realized that these more alternative modalities, even so, like yoga, meditation, nutrition, they're still not enough, right? Because I was being faced with being a primary caregiver with my mother. I had tools, I had a level of understanding more than a lot of people, but I was, I felt like I was trying to take water out of a bath, but the tap was on and I didn't have to turn the tap off, so I was doing something, but not really. And that's when I started to study trauma and shamanism and the nervous system and the unconscious mind. And I say what's different about me is that most people at 23 are out partying with their friends, and I was going to hospices and having big conversations and studying and researching and learning. And anyway, I am going to bring this all together. After studying healing for about, 7-8 years, I realized that I know this is going to resonate with you because it's about connection, but I think one of the ways that we've gone wrong in healing, and even just the way that we view the world, is that we separate different modalities. We have mindset over here, psychologists over here, nutritionists over here, trauma workers over here. And because of my life experience, I'd studied more certifications and programs than probably people in 3 lifetimes in the space of like a few years. I had this realization of, it all goes together, right? Wow. This all goes together. And so about 3 years ago, I created a system. It's called integrative healing. And it's this multi-dimensional, multi-modality approach to healing. And I call it full picture healing. I call it, it's holistic healing, but with a framework and a map to transformation, because I feel like that's what I lacked. I had so much desire to be well, but I didn't have the education. So what do I do? Who am I? I mean, I can tell you about my business, but primarily at my core, I'm a teacher. I'm an educator, right? I'm an innovator. I believe that I'm a revolutionary when it comes to health and healing, because I'm determined to make sure that more people know what is possible in terms of health and healing. Yeah. Very, very strong advocate for talking about end of life care, because that wasn't a thing when my mum was passing away. No one was talking about it. And I'm trained as a death doula. I do all sorts of things. I'm the strangest business coach that exists on planet Earth because I'm so multifaceted. But I genuinely work with high achievers that are here to do something extraordinary, and they realize that their mission in life isn't just going to be created because of action, and elbow grease. They understand that their health, their mastery, right, their self-healing, their understanding of their self, their understanding of the universe, the world, the way that life works is going to be like the rocket fuel, right, or gold dust, whatever you want to call it, to their mission, to their purpose on planet Earth. So I am there for those people, but I'm also here to educate people on a mass scale.
Yeah. Wow. That, isn't it interesting that we have, so many of us entrepreneurs, we have these life experiences that in turn lead us in the direction of the work that we now end up doing and stuff, and the impact that we now get to make in the world. And what a perfect example of that in what you just shared. I mean, I can totally see why you are so passionate, so committed to the work that you do in this world, because you've been where these people are at. You've experienced this, you've been through it, and you just have empathy for them, and you just want to be of help, you just want to be of service. And the heck, that's the same kind of thing that inspires me to do what I do in the world. That's heck, I love doing this podcast for so much of the same reasons. I love entrepreneurs and I just want to help them. And so, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set, I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit. I'm gonna reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, Hannah, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Hannah, I'm just like really excited to hear your story, your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, it's such a good question because, we talked about this before, and it's, I'm going to summarize it to a few people, but it's everybody. I personally don't believe in this concept of self-made. We've
Yeah.
scaled the business to pretty good economic places, and I would never call myself self-made. I'm like, do you know how many people made this? Like, this is made by every. Do you know how
Right?
many hands are here? Like,
Yeah.
it is. You see my hands, right? That's
Yeah.
that's why you think it's self-made. It is not self-made. But
That's right.
the primary person for me is the journey with my mother, right? It was. It was in her dying that I learned how to live. And so when I share my story, a lot of people go, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and they're quite surprised when I say, "But for me, this is not a negative thing for me." And I believe in like soul agreements. I believe that this was exactly what was meant to happen. And she showed me a life without health and healing, so I could choose a life with health and healing. You know what I mean? So like I feel great honor and reverence towards my mother and her life. And I know that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, if it weren't for her.
Yeah.
And if it, I know that to be true. I always say this with my father as well. My father is a Norwegian crime fiction translator. There are no weirder jobs on planet Earth than what my father does. That has been a huge person for me that's been pivotal as well, because there was great permission as a child to just be who I am, right? And I think that's a huge privilege that I really love to be grateful for and remember. There's also someone that comes to mind, and this is someone that I've told them that I'm very grateful for, but I don't think they realize to the level. When I decided that I was going to heal and share it with the world, and I just finished my university degree, I went to go work at Nando's, which is like a chicken restaurant in the UK at this time. And I did 3 months waitressing. I waitressed, for a long period of time. And next to this restaurant, there was a gym, and there was this PT, and he was slightly unique in the fact that he didn't just do nutrition and sport. His mother was a psychologist, and she worked with mental health. And so, I told him about my situation. I hired him as a PT, and I told him about my situation, and he looked at me, and this will always stay with me. He was the first person, I'd been in and out of doctors for the last, I don't know how many years, and they'd all said, they'd just not said anything very helpful. And he looks at me and he says, it doesn't have to be this way. And he bought me this book of nutrition. He said, look at the connection between nutrition and mental health. He says, if you've not been eating because you've got an eating disorder, well, look at your nutrition. There's stuff that you can do about this. This isn't. And it's the first person that had said to me, it's like given my power back. Like, you can do something about this. You're not just, these things haven't just happened to you and now you're dealing with it. Like, you're in the driving seat of your life. What do you want to do? Right. And I haven't seen this person in like 10 years, but if it wasn't for them, that was really like, it was really an awakening of,
Wow.
I can do something. I can choose to change. I can choose. And so, ever since then, there's loads of coaches, mentors, my shamanic teacher, Chris Waters, my coach, Hina Khan, I've worked with so many people. I believe in mentorship. I live and breathe mentorship. I believe in mentorship for myself to facilitate for others, and for me, to have with others. So there's a long list of coaches and mentors that have absolutely transformed my life. And I'm very, very grateful for those as well. But then I think if you say two relationships, the two ones that come in is like my mum and this personal trainer at this gym that I never expected to change my life. That was the first time I invested in myself, by the way.
Wow. Wow.
Like
Wow.
£200, right?
Yeah.
But I got a message that was that's continued into my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look back, so that interaction that you had with the personal trainer, you said that was about 10 years ago, is that right?
So I'm 31 and I would have been 21. So yeah, it is 10
Okay.
years ago.
Okay. So if you look back over the last 10 years, and you can, we can talk, it could be the relationship that you had with your mother, with your father, with the personal trainer, but and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with lots of examples once I ask you this question, but I just want to challenge you to come up with one that was really impactful. So if you look at these relationships that you've just spoken about and these people that you've just honored, and you look then forward to what's happened in your life and where you have been empowered to make such a big impact in the world. And you also know, hands down, that would have never happened without your relationship with whichever person that was. What is an example that just immediately comes to mind for you?
I mean, it all stems back to, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gone through the journey with my mum. It wouldn't have happened. I don't think the desire would have been there. Like, why would I desire to go out and do that if I didn't have this story and seeing her pass away?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the primary driver of my life. It's been the primary driver of my life since I was 19,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, I want to dig into this just a little bit more because, I know you, when I was getting to know you, even in the conversations that we had before we ever did this interview, I know that I shared with you that I lost my father at a young age when I was just 16, and my mom has since passed away too. And in fact, I was commenting to my wife just the other day. I said, I never occurred to me before, but my dad passed away when I was 16. My mom passed away 16 years later when I was 32. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I never even realized that before until just now, and I don't know if there's anything there, but I'm like, it's an interesting thing to note. And we've all had experiences in our lives and that we can view in whatever way we want. And a lot of times the loss of a loved one, of a friend, or what have you, it can be an experience that the story we tell ourselves is one of loss, and it's not one that serves us. And losing my father at a young age was not an enjoyable experience. And in fact, what was really not enjoyable for me as a young boy was from the age of 14 and a half to 16, over that year and a half, watching my father's health deteriorate to the point where his body would no longer serve him, and that's when he passed away. But yet, through that year and a half, I got to have so many conversations with my dad. When my dad did pass, there was zero regret. There was none of this. Oh, I wish I would have said that to my dad. I wish I would have had this because you know what? We had all of those conversations. And losing my dad at a young age was, would I have liked to have had my dad for much longer in my life? Absolutely, I would. But he made such an impact on me for the time that he was in my life. And it has served me all my life since then. And, I believe that the story we tell about our experiences is everything because we get to choose that story. And unfortunately, a lot of people choose a story that is not helpful, that is not beneficial to us and stuff. And I just wanted to open that door because I know you could speak to that too.
Absolutely. It's, whether you want to use the word creation or manifestation, we create through our perception, right? Even in business, I was just speaking to a client today, and she was experiencing a result that she didn't like, right? And we had a choice there, and we were talking about it. This is slightly different to the, stories of our life, but it's the same thing. I said, however you decide to perceive it is what you create, right? If you
Yeah,
see this as a failure, it will become a failure. If you see this as a launch pad, something that you had to learn to get you to the next level, then it's going to be a launch pad for the next level, right? And
yeah,
it's how you perceive life is how you create it. And so it's the same with loss. We can see it as, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me, right? Or we can see it as, there is grief here, and I decided when my mom passed away, I remember making this choice as well. It was a choice. It was a decision. I decided to make it the best thing that had ever happened to me, right? And it sounds so unusual, right? That we look at these situations, and I think it's a bit of revolution to be like, I don't choose to think what everyone thinks about this situation. I choose to be the creator of my own story, right? And I actually think that that's the core of healing. That's the core of self-mastery. It's realizing that you are a creator, right? Whether you're consciously creating or unconsciously creating or any of that, but you actually do have a choice in the screenplay of your life.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And a lot of that is how you perceive your life.
That's right. And what an empowering place that is to come from when we come to that realization that, you know what, I'm in control of this. I get to control this. I get to decide how I'm going to look at this. And man, that is such an empowering place to come from. And so, Hannah, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. But I knew that this was going to be valuable. I knew that, and for me, I mean, I love interviewing entrepreneurs like you and giving you the chance to share your story around this topic of relationships and honor some people who have been so impactful on your life, but also for the listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs. The goal is really simple. I want to use these conversations to inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And thanks to you, Hannah, we have definitely delivered on that today. And so I want to thank you for your role in that. For anybody who's listening to this, going, wow, I really like Hannah. I like the way she shows up. Or maybe they're like, you know what, man, I've been through some stuff like Hannah was talking about, and I would just like to find out more about her and the work she's doing. How can they do that, Hannah?
So the best way. So firstly, thank you for having me here. This has been so
Yeah.
fun, and I really appreciate you creating this space. Secondly, so my name is said Hannah. It's spelled Jana. That confuses people. I'm half Spanish, half English. Think jalapeno, okay?
There
So many
you
people have asked
go.
me. So many people say, "Are you sure that's how you spell your name?" I'm like, I'm 31 years old. There are things I do not know, but my name is not one of them, right? So it's Jana. Bartlett, Bartlett, Alonso. So you can see the Spanish English blend there. And yeah, I would love to hear from you if you've got something you'd like to share after listening to this conversation. Drop me it on Instagram. So it's Hannah Bartlett Alonso on Instagram.
Okay.
And I've got a couple of free courses if you guys want to trial some of the healing material or the healing material with the business material. You can just send me a message saying podcast, and I will
Okay.
know what that means.
Perfect.
You can
Perfect.
add more words. Okay. You can add more words. But if you don't want to, you can start with podcast.
Well, there you go. There you go. Well, Hannah, before we, wrap up, I want to just make sure, I give you the opportunity. If there's any last thing you might feel led to share before we call it a wrap here today, I just want to make sure that I open that door for you as well.
I think that's pretty much me. It's just a reminder that anything is possible, right?
Yeah.
If you're willing to look inside, you're willing to do the inner work, you're willing to master the self. There's nothing that you can't do, overcome, be, have.
Yeah.
let's
Yeah,
close there.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Really appreciate it. And I am excited to get this out and share it with other entrepreneurs. So thank you so much.
Thank you for creating this.